Hi everyone, you are watching Pocono Perspectives. I'm Chris Barrett for the PTN Network, that's the Pocono Television Network, and I'm here with a gentleman who had the Herculean task of organizing the 250th anniversary of anthracite mining in the United States, and it was a task. So he and I have talked a lot. We have been at number 9 Mine in Lehighton. We've talked all things anthracite. He and I have a very, very common history. So we're going to talk about all great things, anthracite, the 250th, and we're in the Asa Packer mansion, right, Scott?
That's right. And who better than to start off the tradition of anthracite mining in this area other than Asa Packer?
Right, and the railroad pieces and everything like that, he was just such a central figure, and not only to this region and to Pennsylvania, but to America, right?
Well, very much so. And he was a very prominent American as well, too. A friend of presidents. He was a senator and one of the most successful and wealthiest industrialists of his age. And he started off, of course, in our area, rebuilding canal boats, and then dominated part of that industry, made enough money in that industry to invest in his own railroad.
Because he was a carpenter, right?
That's right. And he was really a Renaissance man, a jack of all trades. He was successful at basically everything he ever did. And he also was part of Packer, Carter and Company, which was his own coal mining company as well. So we had the railroads, the coal, after he had made some money in the rebuilding of canal boats.
So talk a little bit about when he came to town, but basically what the area was like at that time. How prevalent was anthracite? Was it discovered at that time?
Yes, anthracite had been known in the region even before our first settlements in our region, which, by the way, our 250th from last year, 2018, was based on. But that was back in 1768. And that preceded really the Industrial Revolution kicking off, but this was one of the locations for it. For instance, our gravity railroad here, which was the first of its type, was from May of 1827. And once that started in, with the canal boats as well, coal started flowing out of this area, and it fueled the Industrial Revolution here in America.
Talk a little bit about the Industrial Revolution. So why was anthracite coal so important to that?
Well, proximity was one thing. Although it was very hard to get in and out of our mountains here. There are only 7 natural gaps into the coal region, as we call it, which is northeastern Pennsylvania. But river navigation was the only choice they had, because our mountains aren't especially high, but they're very steep. So wagoning out goods, and coal in particular with the weight of it, was just impractical. So it was the development of the canals and the weights that they could carry that really allowed it to take off. And of course, by 1827, here in what used to be called Mock Chunk, that all started in.
So at the same time, and I know the county names were different, but was Luzerne and Lackawanna County, Schuylkill, were they all somewhat developing the same way that carbon was at the time in Monroe?
Carbon was earlier, what was here, a little bit earlier. Schuylkill would come a little bit later. But by the same token, Schuylkill has still the oldest operating coal railroad in the entire New World. We set the patterns, the terminology, and often supplied the material that launched the Industrial Revolution across the rest of the country.
And wasn't it, from what I understand, we had talked to Ron Sheen about Asa Packer and the Lehigh Valley Railroad and coal getting from this region to Philadelphia and to New York. So can we say that, or could we say that that coal ended up fueling the rest of the world's Industrial Revolution after ours?
Well, it certainly did America's. And what happened here as in the long run, of course, was that we were more successful at it probably than anywhere else. That's why we called the 20th century the American century, because the foundation that we set here in places like what was called Mock Chunk in the 1800s allowed us to dominate industry across the planet in the next century. And we were, of course, the largest industrialized country in the 20th century. There's no doubt about it.
How did these industrialists really deal with labor? Because there are a lot of things that happened here in the Northeast that really kind of set the stage for labor, correct?
Well, probably the most important things happened early here. For instance, the coal region here of northeastern Pennsylvania is where the WBA, Workmen's Benevolent Association, truly one of the first unions, was developed to try to control the fact that people were exploited. Now, one of the things we need to say as we sit here in the Packer mansion is Asa Packer was not an example of that exploitation. He was universally regarded as a very good man. As soon as the mining companies, some of them, the worst examples, felt that things were getting out of hand, they would bring in their own private police forces, whether it was people they hired or forces they developed themselves. This was before there was a state police in Pennsylvania here. And they would put down these often legitimate complaints that were behind these riots in brutal fashion. And unfortunately, of course, once things get to the riot stage because they've gone too far, then everything's out of control and then bad things happen. And our region is unfortunately filled with stories of that.
So how and why did coal decline?
Well, there's sort of an analogy with our canals here. The canals allowed the movement of coal and iron ore to fuel the anthracite iron industry, which was the precursor to steel in this country. The anthracite iron industry allowed rails to be made, which were then used to build railroads, which replaced the canals. Similarly, anthracite was really square one in heavy industry for this country. And it did such a great job of generating wealth, skilled labor, technological development, that it actually brought on, not only through investment, but through technology and people knowing what to do with it, all of these other energy functions which replaced it. But that's the natural evolution of something that's a great idea for its time, evolving into better technology.
So this area really felt the brunt of that.
Oh, sure it did.
Decline.
It was stage one in that evolution that overtook it. Yes, that's correct. But that shows you what a great job we did here. As an example, anthracite investment, let's use the steel industry as an example. Anthracite investment from Charlemagne Tower, who was a coal baron out of Pottsville. He is memorialized in Tower, Minnesota, because it was anthracite money that he made as a coal baron in Pottsville that developed the Minnesota Iron Range, which was the greatest source of iron through America's industrialization in the 20th century.
You have something for us, is that right?
Yes, we do.
So what is that? Oh,
This is Pennsylvania anthracite.
I love it.
As you well know, what your grandfather used to mine and what I and my father and going back 5 generations in my family used to mine. But this is Pennsylvania anthracite, which is a stunningly beautiful mineral. It is an environmental blessing to America that here in the Northeast, when we were using anthracite was largely non-polluting.
So let's talk a little bit about the guests that would come here to Jim Thorpe, which was Mount Chunk. Obviously the Asa Packer Museum, which is a must-see.
Absolutely.
Harry Packer's museum is also here. What about number 9? I wanted to talk a little bit about number 9 too.
Just 12 minutes over the mountain to the west is Lansford, Pennsylvania. The number 9 is one of our 3 tourist mines in the region, all of which are wonderful. It's the newest of our 3 tourist mines, but it's the oldest coal mine you can tour in America. And one of the things that the number 9 did was, as you well know from having been in there several times, they left it very rustic. There is no doubt when you were in there that you were in the coal mine as it really was.
Right.
It's not been cleaned up, it's not been touristed up. It's pretty much right on the money.
What about the displays that are there?
Oh, the Wash Shanty
Right, the
Museum.
Wash Shanty, right.
Yeah, it was the old clothing changing house. And that still exists, of course. And the clothing on the last day of operation that was hanging up to dry because coal mining is a very wet process, that's still hanging there, by the way, and has been since 1972 when the mine shut down. And in around it we have taken the wash shanty and we've made it a really wonderful museum. That in
it is.
itself is worth the visit. But then when you go in the mine, you get the train ride in. That train ride's memorable, as you know.
Yes, it is.
And it's a great ride in, and then you come out. And for the folks that would be scared about this because they think it's all claustrophobic, number 9, like many of our larger collieries in the region, was a very big production mine. And it was for 117 years without interruption. Number 9 is roughly 10 by 12 feet is the openings of the...
it doesn't feel claustrophobic.
Oh, not at all. It's bigger than some guest bedrooms.
Yeah, I mean, it's
You know,
it's
and
very
it goes on for 1,600 feet that way. So most people are not going to feel claustrophobic at all. They enjoy it once they're in there.
But the thing that I loved about it was when you went in, you could see where the actual hospital was, where there were offices that were actually down inside the mine. And you really get the feeling that you're a miner.
Oh, yes.
You know, and for the first time, I thought to myself, I kind of knew what my grandfather must have felt like every day going into the mine and every day coming out.
But remember, this was normal to him.
Right.
We all thought that that's the way it should be, and it didn't bother them. They would have liked working in a big open mine like the number 9. Now, the number 9, and you can't deny this about any large colliery here in northeastern Pennsylvania. Anthracite is an exceedingly dangerous, and still is, occupation. So there were people who were killed in that process, and that's true of any mine tour. But, and our ghost hunters, by the way, love that, who come to check these
We have to
mine
save that
tours
for
out.
another one. But
Yeah,
I'd like to have that
that's
too.
another story. But we also have the remnants of the shaft, which was the elevator in the center of the mine once you go in to get down to the other 3 levels. That still exists. It's the only one you can see. We show the mule ways, which is how we used to get the mules from one level to the other back before we had electric mine motors pulling the loaded train cars out. We had mules pulling wooden cars that were driven by, of course, little boys, really. To bring their job was to bring the cars out of the mine. That's all very, very much evident at the number 9.
Yeah, it's almost going back, almost like Asa Packer in a way. It really seems like you're going back in time.
Oh, it is.
And it's a very immersive experience. So like this would be, I mean, coming in here, it's so overwhelming. Everywhere you look, there's a story, and the folks here are very, very knowledgeable about it. But same thing at number 9. If you really want to immerse yourself in the experience, you have the people there that do it. So it's, you get that feeling.
And the tours are very good in all 3 of our mine tours, and number 9 is very much up there with them. And it's an exceptional tour. It's a great blessing to our region here in northeastern Pennsylvania that we have the residual of all of this history, heritage, and industry that went on. And it's really a blessing too, because of proximity, to the visitors that come to our region. You know, right here as we sit in Jim Thorpe, we are within a day's drive of 20% of the population of the United States.
Right.
1 day's drive, not even a long day in most cases. And this is a great place to come and visit, you know, even just for a long weekend. But if you come for a long weekend, you'll be coming back.
Right.
Because there's so much to see. I can't think of other areas, not only in mining, but in a lot of other tourist venues, where you have so much in such a concentrated area. I would say this is grand central to it here in Jim Thorpe. We have tremendous things that can keep you busy for 2 or 3 trips within half an hour or 45 minutes of this location.
So you look here and you have the steam engine, you have the mansion, you have number 9.
Yeah, you got it all.
But this could go on for hours, and I would love it to. We got to save the ghost stories for the next one.
Okay.
But I've been really, really fortunate to be here with Scott Herring. He was the gentleman who put together the 250th anniversary of Anthracite. We touched on some things, but I really want to encourage all of you that to visit Jim Thorpe, to visit the Asa Packer Mansion, to visit number 9 mine, and to delve a little bit into a really important part of United States history and, of course, the northeastern Pennsylvania region. I'm Chris Barrett for Scott. You are watching Pocono Perspectives. Again, thank you for watching.